Hello, everybody. Good Friday morning to all of you. This is Jan Rutherford, founder of Self-Reliant Leadership. Hey, thanks for joining me today on LinkedIn Live, also called Office Hours. I haven't been on for quite a while, but this is the 43rd session I've done. And I wanted to really put out there a coaching workshop because a lot of the clients I'm working with right now are really struggling with two things. One, are they really doing a good job performance managing their team? That is, are the people on their team producing more value than they cost? And secondly, are they creating a sense of urgency with this? And that's what I've been seeing out there. So I thought I'd put out some fundamentals, and I would love to hear who's on the call. That would be great. If you could just throw in the comments, where you're listening in from, and if you have any questions at all during this session, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to kind of interrupt my stream of consciousness and address the things that are most important to you. So if it's okay with you, we'll just get started, and I'll kind of click through what I've got here as my crutch, if you will. For those of you that have followed Self-Reliant Leadership for a while, you know that it's really based on three pillars. It's really about us leading ourselves, taking ownership, showing grittiness, being persistent, determined. And then and only then can we really lead others and outline the expectations we have. And the definition I love the most about leadership is trying to get others to do things they otherwise wouldn't do willingly. And that's what's key. And when we do that, when we have a team like that, we really create a sense of duty with one another. And the last one, for those of you that really get to the executive level and the C-suite, is really what it takes to lead at the organizational level, to create alignment and focus throughout the organization. Now, wherever we're at, even if we're not at the top, we can definitely help our boss and bosses be more aligned, be more focused by the way that we influence other people. So again, I know people tend to join a little bit late as these come in, and you see it's live. So if you're joining, please put in the comments where you're dialing in from. I'd love to know who's listening in. So let's get started. One of the things when it comes to leading self and taking ownership that I remind people all the time is there's really only two things you ultimately control. And that's your time, your calendar, how you schedule what you say yes to, and how you respond to the environment and other people. And that's it. That is it. And when I think about the time I spend coaching, it really boils into those two buckets. Most people want to have more time to be strategic and plan and reflect, and they want to spend more time developing their people. It's a math problem. And then the other thing that I hear a lot of is it's about difficult conversations. And often that's because expectations aren't aligned. Things have been miscommunicated. People are disappointed. And we've got to figure out, how do I respond? How do I deal with these hard, tough talks? And that's, when it comes to that, it really is about trying to influence other people. We can't control them, of course. But what takes up so much of our time is the things that distract us, all the things in the circle of concern, the things going on in the world that we cannot control, whether that be feast, famine, politics, whatever it might be, economic, macroeconomic things. Those are things that distract. And so as an individual, and taking ownership is we've got to really focus on what we can control. And when we're influencing other people, help them understand what they can control. Again, their time and how they respond. Patrick, welcome. And if you've got any questions, just holler at me and we'll get to them. So let's get right into the coaching part. So again, we've got a responsibility to lead ourselves. But what we've got to do is really, be good at coaching other people to produce great business results. And as you can see from the stats here below, we know it's effective. We're going to retain our top talent. We're going to have more engagement with people. Our customer satisfaction is going to go up. Our commitment and ultimately it's going to affect our bottom line. So most of us have been promoted because we're competent as individual contributors. And now what's really shifted is now we have to get work done through other people, not just through ourselves. And that's the hard part, because we can't just be an expert. We've got to be a teacher and a coach. And we've got to lead people, really with their head, their hands, and their heart. And this is all about setting expectations. And if you think about it, let's just look at it from a big picture perspective. We've got to set the direction. We've got to hit certain goals in a certain amount of time, and that's the pace. And when we get there, we want people to be willing and still engage and know we're going to ask them to go further. I'll give you an analogy. When we're climbing a mountain, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to go to the top. Okay, how fast can we go? Well, you know what? We can go as fast as the slowest person. Now, the slowest person might not average or might not go 2 miles an hour. They might go 3 miles an hour and then need 30 minutes of rest, and then 1 mile an hour, then 3 miles. The whole point is we really have to pay attention. We sort of have to have eyes in the back of our head to be able to know how the team is doing. We still have to accomplish the objective. We still have to get to the summit before dark, but we've got to determine a pace that people can sustain. Because here's the thing, when we get to the summit and everybody says, oh, isn't this a great accomplishment? We're going to ask them to go to the next summit. And before we go to the next summit, what are we going to have to do? We're going to have to go down. And that sucks. and people are going to, if they're not committed and happy, it's going to be really tough to motivate them. So that's what we need to do. And, and I remember on an expedition I led once, there was 2 teams and 2 leaders. And I told both leaders the same thing. Go to the top safely and come back down. That was it. It was a 10,000 foot mountain, 2 groups. And these were just regular people. They weren't expert climbers or anything like that. They were business people and military veterans. So one of the leaders basically took the team and he said, you know what, we're going to go this easy route. We're going to go slow. It's going to be a slog, but there's no exposure. There's no steep cliffs or anything like that. And that team is probably going to beat us. The other leader just went like a bat out of hell. And he went up some ridge. It looked, actually, it wasn't the safest route, but it was the fastest, direct line. What he failed to do was realize there's a whole bunch of people on the team that didn't want to be near cliffs or exposure or anything like that. So he takes off, and all of a sudden he looks back and everybody stopped because they're scared. They're petrified. The bottom line is both teams reached the top at the same time. It was sort of classic tortoise and hare. The team that was the tortoise, just slow and steady progress. They checked in, everybody was happy, smiling. The other team went really fast and then they stopped. They get to the top, they are not happy, they are not smiling. The tortoise team, if we'd asked them to go climb another mountain, they would have said, heck yeah. The other team would have said, no way. My point is, it's real easy to think about, we need to accomplish this goal in this amount of time. We all understand this. And Danilo just asked if this will be uploaded so we can watch later. Yes, it will. It'll be on YouTube and LinkedIn. The bottom line is, when we set out to lead a team, we have to be cognizant of how we want people to feel when we're leading them. And again, be deliberate. Do I want people to be stretched to the limit and see what they can take? Or do I want people to be engaged, motivated, ready to do the next thing? It really depends on you. But what I find is most people don't approach a leadership challenge intentionally, deliberately, and say, hey, I want to accomplish the goal. And at the same time, this is how I want people to feel. So one of the things that often gets left out is really letting the team know ahead of time, hey, what's the expectation? This is a really simple one, and it's super easy to remember. I call it tree. And like a tree, if a tree is a good tree, a healthy tree, it's going to survive the seasons, the weather. It might survive a fire because the roots are strong. And the roots are like a company with really strong core values. And the trunk is like a really good strategy. And the limbs are like leaders, and the leaves are really like individual contributors. So I like that analogy. And what I would say to a team, if I didn't know anything else to say, I would say, hey, here's what we're all about. T is for team. We before me. This is about the team, not about individuals. The R is about results. This team exists to accomplish an objective. That's why it's here. There's a problem. That's why the team came together. The E is for empathy. Hey, we're all not going to have great days every day. Let's be empathetic to one another. Let's really understand where people are at, where they're coming from. And the other E is, bottom line, is all of us, our job is to make everybody else's job easier, not harder. In other words, no drama. Don't be a pain in the butt. Really think about the team. Think about your duty to one another. So that's what I would lay out in the absence of knowing anything else about the team, the mission. That would be, 4 pillars that I would say, hey, these are not negotiable. So, this whole expectation thing, we hear a lot about accountability. And I say, that shouldn't be the thing. Accountability takes 2 seconds. Either you did it or you didn't to the certain quality standard. It's real simple. It takes 1 second. The thing that gets left off so often is, the expectations. Because if somebody didn't accomplish something, we're going to go right back to setting expectations. But we don't invest the time up front. And here's what I say to leaders when they come to me with a difficult employee and they say, this guy doesn't get it or this gal doesn't get it. I need to have a tough conversation. And I always say, whoa, wait a minute. I've got 3 questions for you. Have the expectations been crystal clear with regard to results and behaviors? Do they know what they need to accomplish? Do they know how to behave? I go, okay. Second, does this person know where they stand with you? Do they know they're meeting expectations or not, or exceeding? I haven't talked to them yet. Third question, do they know the consequences? If they perform really well, hey, what are the incentives? Do they know the consequences if they fail? How it affects the team, how it affects the bigger organization, how it might affect their own career. And they'll go, no. Like, okay, you can't complain about this person yet because you haven't done your job. They need to know the expectations, results, and behaviors. They need to know where they stand unambiguously, and they need to know, hey, what happens if I pass or fail? What's the praise? What's the punishment? If you don't convey that, it's really hard to hold somebody accountable. So, that's one thing that's if you remember anything from this, that I think is the most important slide. So again, if you've got any questions, just throw them in the comments, and I'll be glad to answer those and address those. Let me move on. So part of expectation setting is really knowing, hey, what are the right questions I need to ask? Do they get the big picture? What we're trying to do. And this comes from Marshall Goldsmith. And he would say, hey, where are we going? Do they understand the big picture of the organization, the purpose, the meaning, what we're trying to accomplish, what it means for shareholders, stakeholders, whatever it may be? The second question, where are you going? Do they understand how what they're doing fits into the big picture? So if you don't get the response that you think you should in either of these questions, it's time to pause, stop. Hey, you've got work to do. They don't understand. They don't understand the expectations. Third question, hey, what do you think you're doing well? Do they have self-awareness? I hear all the time people say, well, I didn't used to be a good listener, but I'm a good listener now. And I think, oh, the self-awareness isn't there. So that's your place to really check, do they really know what they're doing well? And fourth, do they really know, what they need to be working on? Fifth question, how can I help? Not what can I do? I got enough stuff, but how can I help you? And the last question, and you'll only get a response from this if you have a really good trusting relationship, is, hey, what suggestions do you have for me? Now notice, I'm not asking for feedback. Feedback puts people on the defense. I'm asking for advice or suggestions. It's going to be feedback, but it's a lot easier if you're a subordinate to someone to say, hey, in the future, think about this, than to say, hey, yesterday you really made me angry. Or I thought I felt disrespected. That puts people in a tough spot. And again, if you don't get an answer there, then you've got work to do. If somebody's not willing to provide a suggestion, they either have apathy and they don't care, they're not committed, and that's your responsibility, or maybe they don't feel safe, and again, your responsibility. So the other thing is, when you're working and coaching people, is to really figure out, hey, are the 5 priorities that I have the same as the 5 priorities that the person I'm speaking to has? And if they don't, I mean, if I just ask somebody, hey, what's the priority? They're going to give me the book answer. But if I say, hey, what do you wish you had more time to do? They're going to say, they're probably going to point to things that they like, they enjoy, that they're good at. And then second, what are you avoiding right now? Third, hey, what would you like to stop doing or delegate? When you ask those 3 questions, you're going to get a picture of what they're working on. And if it's simpatico with you, then great. If you realize, of the 5 things that they talked about, only one of them was a priority you thought, you've got work to do. Now, there's 2 things you can do. One, you can tell them what to do. Hey, these are the priorities. Or you can coach them. You can help them self-discover. You can negotiate with them, to help them see, because people support what they help create. If that's what creates real commitment. If you just tell people what to do and you're very directive, they'll probably comply, but their heart and soul is not going to be in it. And our job, again, direction, pace, and tone, is to get them to be committed and willing. So 4th question here is, what are you trying to make happen in the next 90 days? Hey, we're in Q1 of 2024. If you don't nail Q1, you're going to be playing catch up all year. And this is the part where I'm seeing a lack, for lack of a better description, I'm seeing a lack of a sense of urgency in a lot of the people I'm working with. They know what they need to do. They're kind of at their own pace. Again, we don't want to have a sense of urgency for no reason. But if we don't get off to a really great start at the beginning of the year, it's really tough. And so we've got to stretch people without breaking them. We've got to stretch them without burning them out. But again, we need to create some momentum at the very beginning of the year. It'll make the rest of the year so much easier. The last question here is, again, somebody's self-awareness with regard to strengths and weaknesses. But what we're asking is a very pointed question. Hey, what's one area, if you made an improvement, would you see the greatest return on time, energy, and dollars? With the organization. Another way to say that question is, hey, what's the thing that you're getting better at every day? Or what's the main thing you should be getting better at every day? Or, hey, if you could only do one thing really, really well that would move the needle for the whole organization, what would that be? Again, this is because, we can't work 80 hours a week. I don't even know if we could work more than 50 if we wanted to, and not have a diminishing point of return. We've got to really be focused and make sure that what we're doing is really highly impactful. And a lot of this is you sitting down with your people and helping them to focus on things. But more importantly, it's helping them say no to things. And that's the tough thing, is we can't just keep piling stuff on. There are things that are going to move the needle, and then there's things that are not. And we've got to say no to those. And it's really hard. And it takes a lot of discipline and it's got to be an environment that feels safe. So I've been doing all the talking, and so if there's any questions, please let me know. I'll be glad to answer those. Um, this is really the critical part, is we have to catch people doing things right. We know from a lot of the research that's out there that for people to feel they've been treated fair, they need to hear 5 kudos to every criticism. And those kudos can't just be great job. They have to be truthful and timely. They have to be specific, and they have to be personal. Think TSP, like a teaspoon: truthful, timely, specific, and personal. And it would be, hey, I really appreciate you pulling that agenda together for the meeting. That set the tone. We were very productive. We got a lot done. Now we're not going to have 2 more meetings. Thank you. That's really truthful. It's timely. It's specific. And it's not just, hey, good job in the meeting. And in all the engagements I see, employee engagement, the thing that's a common thread is people feel they're not appreciated enough. And, old school is, I shouldn't have to say please and thank you, for doing your job. But here's the reality. You do. You do have to say please and thank you. And you have to acknowledge and appreciate people. If you want them to be truly committed, and when they get to the top of the mountain, they're willing and able to go to the next mountain. Or in business speak, we hit our quarterly objectives. Now we have a big objective for Q2 coming up. So really important to catch people doing things right. And the 6 questions on this slide are right from the Gallup survey, which is, there's 12 questions in the Gallup survey that are really the basis of most employee engagement surveys. These are the 6 that cost nothing except your time. And every employee, everybody that you coach, I guarantee they want more time with you. So here's the 6 that really determine if people are committed. Hey, in the last week, somebody, has given me recognition or praise for the work I do. In the last 6 months, somebody's talked to me about my progress, about my career. This last year, I've had opportunities to learn and grow. It doesn't mean you have to spend a fortune on training and development. It means you can give people a project, a special project. You can give them a responsibility. You can say, I trust you. The 4th, which is what we've talked about a lot here, is I know what's expected of me. There's no ambiguity. I know the behaviors I need to exhibit, and I know the results that are expected. And the 5th is somebody's encouraging me. Somebody's in my corner. And lastly, the person I report to seems to care about me as a person. You look at those and you're like, those are pretty basic and simple. But here's the thing. We know 40% of people feel ignored by their boss. Why? Oh, the boss is busy. The boss has their own responsibilities. We're working remotely, hybrid. It might be, and this happens a lot, is the boss is avoiding a difficult conversation. They're kicking the can down the road, and that's not good for anybody. So again, this isn't just the boss responsibility, but this is partly the employee responsibility to let somebody know, hey, these are the things that are going to really keep me motivated and engaged and happy here. And, hopefully the organization where you work, the values line up to these things. And it's so important, that the incentives are there. And by incentives, I'm not just talking about compensation and bonus. I'm talking about the things that get praised. So really important to catch people doing things right. And when it does come to accountability, I kind of go back to my military days and I say, let's look at what we called an after action review. Hey, what was supposed to happen? That was the expectation. What was supposed to happen? What actually occurred? What's the delta? What's the gap between what we thought would happen, what actually happened? So what went well and why, and what can be improved and how? And the picture I've got there is us in Alaska on Mendenhall Glacier. And we were looking at this stream on the glacier that we needed to cross. And we're like, oh gosh, we can't jump across that thing. And, as we were looking at it, everybody was coming up with different options. We throw a rope across, we do this, we do that. Well, what somebody said is, hey, let me just walk down 100 meters and see where this stream goes. Well, we walked 100 meters. It actually went into a hole in the glacier. The stream ended. We walked around it. Gosh, what would have happened potentially if we tried to cross it, with a rope or something? If somebody had fallen, for some awful God reason, somebody had fallen in and the rope didn't hold them, they would have went down the stream into a hole in the middle of a glacier. That would be bad. So, in the after action review, it was, the big takeaway was, we don't have to make a decision really fast, when we look at things, because the value at the top of it, the criteria by which we were making the decision was safety. That was the most important thing. It was for us to be safe. It wasn't for us to get across. It was for us to be safe. And in the business world, sometimes I don't think we establish what the criteria really are. And also in the business world, there aren't very many times that we really have to make a fast decision, that we can step back, take a look at the bigger situation, maybe walk 100 meters or so and see what's there. So something to think about. And the other part, when you do follow up with people after you've laid out your expectations, is to ask great questions. It's not to sit there with a clipboard and did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? It's to ask. So what insights, breakthroughs, accomplishments, have you made since we met last? What did you intend to do but didn't? What sort of challenges are you facing? What do you want to focus on in our discussion? And, as we wrap up, jot down what you plan to do and agree to the next time we meet. And here's the thing, that's the critical thing that's missed, is if I'm sitting with you and outlining expectations, at the end, I'm always going to ask you, hey, before you leave tonight, just in a couple bullets, just write down what you committed to. I get that. And then I can look at it and basically say, yep, spot on. Or, hey, let me add something that we also talked about. Now we have something in writing. And it's not because it's a gotcha kind of thing. It's really to make sure that we really are aligned on expectations. And the other thing, as a contingency, if it's somebody that's difficult and somebody who continues not to meet expectations, you've got stuff in writing, and HR is going to be really happy with you, for having that documented. So, and again, doesn't take a lot of effort, doesn't put it on your plate. You're asking somebody, hey, you made promises, you made commitments, write them down. And that way, when we meet again, we can literally be on the same page. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was, the difficult conversations that are all part of coaching. And that matrix comes from a friend of mine named Chris Warner, who's a great speaker and adventurer. And on the x-axis, you can see, it's alignment of core values or behaviors. On the y-axis is results. Well, I bet you without any prep or looking at spreadsheets or documents or anything, you could take every member on your team and put them in one of those four quadrants. Well, if they're in the red one, they're not behaving right, they're not performing. That's easy. They shouldn't be there. The yellow is where we spend most of our time. Somebody in the left upper quadrant is producing, but they're hard to get along with. That's a discussion. On the bottom right, somebody is really nice and they're a great team player. We love them to death, but they're not hitting their numbers. And in the upper right is our stars. They're doing both. Well, most of the people I work with spend all their time with the people in yellow. And I think they need to. But again, if the expectations are clear, it's easy. either they're meeting expectations or they're not. And hopefully through coaching, you're gonna make progress. But where we really need to spend most of our time is in the upper right with our stars. Um, I remember reading about a Chinese principle of war was to reinforce success, not failure. And the last thing we want to do is ignore our stars and put them in the 40% that are ignored, um, because they'll feel underappreciated. We can't say, "Hey, they're doing great. They don't need me." They actually do. They probably need you more. And again, reinforce the success. But if you are having a difficult conversation, take this guidance I've got here. First off, look, is it worth your time and effort? Have you been clear about the expectations like we've talked about? Are there any obstacles that in the way of them performing? Are there any resources they need? Is it in your mind, hey, they can't do it because they don't know how? They're not trained? Or is it don't? They won't do it or they don't do it, but they know how. And that's where coaching comes in. And what's really important here when we're coaching difficult conversations is at the very beginning, and you have to do this before you can move on, is get agreement on the problem. If you say, hey, how do you think that meeting went? And they say, oh, I think it went great. And you say, what about when you interrupted Sally? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I go, how do you think that made Sally feel? Oh, she probably felt disrespected. Yeah. So if I have that discussion, I can move from there. But if somebody says, well, I interrupted her because this and I'm right, it's like until they see that their behavior is a problem to other people or they're not performing, you're not going to be able to go forward. They have to agree that their behavior or their lack of results is a problem. It's affecting other people. So then you mutually discuss, hey, so what are we going to do about it? And then we mutually agree on, hey, let's bring 3 poker chips to the meeting. And, you put a poker chip on the table every time you talk. And after 3 poker chips, you're done. That's it. You're only going to, pipe in 3 times. Or, hey, you're not going to pipe in till the very last 10 minutes of the meeting. That whatever it might be, but you're going to agree on the action to be taken. And then you're going to set a timeline for, the next time that you follow up, and you're going to really figure out a way, hey, are we able to measure that you're making progress? And then we're going to recognize them. Going back to TSP, truthful and timely, specific and personal. We're going to try to give them 5 kudos for every negative. And then, if they're not making progress, then, difficult decisions, are a duty to your A players. Your A players don't want people that aren't pulling their weight. And the first thing they're going to do is they're going to avoid the poor performers. The second thing they're going to do is look for another organization where they can be around people that will lift them up. So, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Again, easy to explain, it can be very difficult to do, and it takes practice. And the practice is, evaluating yourself. How did I do in that coaching session? The other thing I would encourage you to do before difficult conversations is find someone you trust, somebody that's, that you think is a pretty good coach, and role play with them. Go through the role play, and it'll feel awkward, but it's going to help you be much better prepared. So my question to you is, so, you've heard this, what's your commitment to your own development, to the team that you're a part of, whether you're a leader or a team member? And do you understand how all this connects into the broader organization? So I would encourage you to say, hey, here's based on what I heard today, here's the thing I really need to learn more about or to dig into. Um, there's lots of books out there. There's lots of videos and TED Talks and courses. There's plenty of resources, and I've got courses on LinkedIn, Udemy, Skillsoft, Teachable. in the past 10 years, I think I've recorded over 200 videos, and all on the idea of leadership and teamwork. So if there's anything I can point you to specifically based on what you're struggling with, I'd be glad to do that. Um, so when we've also interviewed over 400 people on our podcast, the Leadership Podcast, and if you've got a challenge, I guarantee we've had somebody on the show in an episode talking about something you're struggling with that we can point you to. So, well, it's been my pleasure. Hopefully, this is a pretty compact bolus of information, but I really hope this has spurred some thoughts with you, that it helps you really take a look in the mirror at leading yourself. Um, with people that you trust, really figuring out, how am I doing with leading my team, and how's that team doing within the broader organization, so that you're off to a great start as we start Q1 of 2024, and that you've got the momentum it takes to endure whatever is thrown our way. So, hey, thanks for joining me, and I wish you a great weekend. And again, please don't hesitate to call on me if I can be a resource. Thank you, and thanks, Denise. Bye bye.